Hey, it's Aaron. Today I have a question from Martin. Martin wants to know, why did the DeLorean Motor Car Company fail? He gives some of his own ideas on why it might have failed, and they're pretty good ones, but they're just a small part of the whole overall picture. For those who don't remember, in the early 1980s, a guy named John DeLorean came out with a car and started selling it. It was unique in that it had a stainless steel body and it was a rear engine design. So it was a rear engine two-seat car with a stainless steel body, and then it became a kind of a cultural icon when it was featured in the Back to the Future movies. Now, the Back to the Future movies didn't save the car because it was well out of production by the time those showed up. The DeLorean went into production in 1981, the early part of that year, I believe it was January, and it ran to 1983. There were only about 9,000 of these made. Now, interestingly, a large number of those 9,000 units are still on the road, or they're still out there. They're not necessarily driving, but they're still out there. The car captured people's imaginations. Internally, when the DeLorean or DMC was being created, it was called the DMC-12, and the reasons for that are murky. We don't know why the number 12. We do know that DeLorean had grand plans to make lots of different models, and this could have been the 12th iteration in design for this car, or it could have been he just liked the number 12. No idea. But that name kind of stuck, and unofficially, after the car's release, it started being called the DMC-12. No good reason for that. The company never called it that outside of the design phase. So once it was marketed, it was just called the DMC, the DeLorean. But regardless, the car had several issues. The biggest one was that the power plant was just not up to the task. It had an engine that was made by Renault. Let me get this right. I'm going to look it up and get it right. It was an engine made by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo in collaboration. Now, at the time, they all had like partnerships and ownership, interest in one another, that kind of thing. So they designed this engine. It was a 2.85 liter V6. The original engine that was going to be used in the car was scrapped because it could not reliably be turbocharged, and DeLorean wanted to turbo the engine. So they used this engine instead. It is a 174 cubic inch. It is officially the ZMJ159. Power output was not that great. 130 horsepower, 153 pound-feet of torque. There were other vehicles on the road at the time that had far better numbers than this. And this was really underpowered for a car, especially this heavy. The DMC weighs over 2,700 pounds. It is a very, very heavy vehicle. What's worse than that is the engine. The car was originally designed to be a mid-engine, so the engine would have been between the two axles. And instead it ended up being a rear engine. The engine was over the rear axle. And that changed the balance of the car. It weighted it back towards the rear. And that did not translate well to good handling characteristics on the road. The car was also very heavy. That also does not help with handling characteristics. And then on top of all of that, the car was hastily made. It was put to production very quickly, and the quality control was not there. Because of that, it gained a reputation very fast for being kind of a pile of junk. There were stories about cars showing up to dealerships, and they wouldn't even start to back them off of the truck they came on. There were stories of cars being delivered to customers who would go out in the morning and the car wouldn't start the day they got it or the day after. There were just story after story of these cars having serious issues. DeLorean did a lot to try to fix that, but really with only about 2 years of production and the company bleeding money very, very quickly, it was just a matter of time before they died out. On top of that, John DeLorean himself, who is the face of the company as well as the guy running it, he got in a bunch of trouble. He was caught on cocaine charges, drug smuggling, and a bunch of other things, and he ended up with this huge legal morass. And of course, the company got tied up in that, and boom, that was really a death knell. In the nutshell, the DeLorean was a middling car. It wasn't great, it wasn't totally terrible, but it really wasn't that good. And it was overpriced, and it had a very limited appeal and limited market. So it was a good launch vehicle if you plan to follow it up with slightly more mainstream offerings after that. So as parallel, Tesla started out with a Roadster, right, with a two-seat car that was a converted Lotus, and launched that into sedan, SUV, etc. sales. DeLorean could have potentially done the same thing, except he came out with a fairly middling product. They had a lot of issues right off the bat that gave him a bad name, and then he had his legal troubles. So those sorts of things are just not, they all came together to just drag this company down. So there you go. That's what happened to DeLorean and the DMC. If you have a question, if you want me to answer it, hit me up. Find me in the comments down there. Find me on social media. Just make sure to tag or DM me. Find me on the website, aarononautos.com. Just look me up, hit me up, ask me your question. I'll do my best to answer it. All right. That's all I got. This has been Aaron. Talk to you again soon.